So we're not going to share our thoughts on this right now, but just kind of hold it with you. But we're going to sort of think about this idea of how do we find small ways to act locally anywhere in our school system, and then how do we build that critical connection. And so where we're going to start with this is by thinking about what we can influence when it comes to trauma. Because there's a difference between influencing and controlling, right? If you think about something like the stress that kids are bringing because of their parents' jobs, I'll just keep on that example, right? We can't control that parents are losing their jobs. We can't control the stress that the parents are having. And we can't control the stress that kids are having, right? Like, you can't just say to somebody who's stressed out, stop being stressed out. That doesn't work. But we can influence it. Influencing something can look like, how do we, I think of control being from the top and influence more being around, right? So how could we show up for kids who are stressed and think about maybe creating opportunities for them to lessen their stress or to have fun and just be kids and not worry about their parents for a couple hours? Or how can we think about helping them learn how to talk about their emotions so they process it in more healthy ways? Those are all ways I could influence their stress while not being able to actually take it away or fix it. And so what we're going to do is to think about the different ways that we might influence some of the things that are causing trauma in our school. So let's have, if we could do a sheet of paper for every table. And maybe you already have markers, I think, there. So when you get your sheet of paper, you're going to be, actually, let me give my instructions and then we'll rip things just for the volume. I'm like, rethink that one right away. Okay, so once you get your paper, you're going to draw 2 big circles on it like this. And so outside of the bigger circle, this is outside influence. It's just outside of our influence. So let me label and then I'll tell you. Inside the circle is what I can influence, and inside here is what I can control. I'm left-handed with horrible handwriting. I'm very sorry. So once you have these labeled, then you're going to use your sheets from before, your How is Trauma Present packets, or other things you want to think of, and you're going to start placing things. So for example, in that example I just had, like, we cannot influence parents' jobs. I can't influence the fact that COVID is a thing. I can't influence the political environment of the country, or I guess maybe I could influence laws by making calls or something, but I can't really influence laws. So outside of the circle is stuff that I'm letting this go, I can't change it, right? But then I want you to think about what could be in your circle of influence. So, for example, if you put bullying as something that causes trauma in your school, there are absolutely things that schools and educators can do, not to control bullying, but to influence it, right? There's all kinds of strategies you can use. We were just talking about, I can't control student stress, but I could certainly influence how they feel about it, or the tools they have to use, right? So I'm putting some things I can influence, and then I should have made this smaller, because you could also think about, are there any things I can control? My guess is you're not going to have a lot in here. So maybe make this one smaller. But maybe there are some things you can control. So you're taking all of how trauma is present and you're mapping it into what's outside my influence, what's inside my influence, what can I control? Questions? I'll come around as well. All right, paper can go. Okay, I'm going to teach you the attention getters that my fourth graders wanted me to use this year. So I say, does anybody know this one? I say, no bees, no honey. And then my student said the response to that is, no work, no money. All right? No bees, no honey. No work, no money. All right. I wouldn't have made that up. They loved that one. All right. So you have your circles of influence. You have your circles of control. I saw some groups talking about how it's, sometimes it's complicated, right? Sometimes it's on the line, or there's some connections that go across the circles. I want you to take 1 second and for each person to take a look at, in your circle of influence, your donut of influence, I would love for each person to put their initials next to what is one thing in that circle of influence that you feel the most passionately about. If you could spend some energy influencing one of those things most, what would it be? So just each person put your initials next to something. If you didn't happen to put one that you feel passionate about, you can always add something. No bees, no honey. All right. I always like when they told me that when I was like, I don't know if I like the capitalism in this attention getter. So we have what we can influence, we have what we want to influence. So then the last missing piece is how do you influence? And one thing that I think is important in trauma-informed schools is that you're always working from strengths. And sometimes at school, when I'm asked to help contribute to school change, I don't feel like it is working from my strengths, right? Like the principal says, we're all going to learn this new curriculum and you then have to turn around and teach it right away, and or we're all designing this new program and you have to sit in these meetings and contribute. Sometimes that doesn't actually play on how I like to make change or my strengths. And so as we think about making change in a way that is trauma-informed, not just to get to being trauma-informed, but actually going about it in a trauma-informed way, it has to be from our strengths. So you have on your table a little packet, and I've listed out a bunch of the different ways that we can influence change, right? Because there's a lot of different ways. One way is just directly doing something, right? So if you're thinking about like bullying, right? Maybe a direct action would be, I'm going to start teaching an anti-bullying program, or I'm going to start intervening, right? Like I'm going to go straight to doing something. And that's what we think of sometimes about influencing change. But there's actually a lot of other ways, right? There's advocacy and trying to make voices heard, right? Like maybe you bring something to a community forum because you want the community to know how bad it's gotten in the school, and you really want to be that, like the bullhorn for that. Maybe there's modeling where you are going to run your classroom in a way that you think that other teachers might be able to look at you as an example and kind of see what you're doing. As you go through, you'll see there's lots of different kind of ways that you can make change. I left a couple blank as well if you think of more, sort of what they look like. And then there's a little activity for you to do, right? SEL activities. On the last page, there's a feelings wheel. Love a good feelings wheel. And I was thinking about, like, how can I help you think about which one of these ways of making change feels right to you? And I was thinking about sometimes it's kind of just that gut feeling, right? Like where if you ask me to do the, let's see, what don't I like? Okay, maybe like observation and documenting, I can be really disorganized sometimes. So like when I look at that one, if I go to my feelings wheel and I say, okay, how would I feel about being asked to be the documentation person? If I go on this wheel, I might look and say, I might feel insecure, I might feel embarrassed because my handwriting's messy. I feel loathing that I was asked to do this, right? Like, okay, bad feelings. So I'm gonna come back here and maybe I'll write those words, or I'll just put like a little sad face emoji next to that and say that doesn't light my fire. Maybe I then read the one for questioning and I go, oh yeah, I can be like a pain in the ass about asking questions sometimes, but I love it. Like I love to get people thinking about another perspective. So I'm going back to my feelings wheel and saying, I feel important when I'm a questioner. I feel hopeful. I feel energetic. So it's sort of just like a gut check for you of, if I'm going to try to influence this thing, what is the best way that's going to light my fire around it? So I'm going to let you go to lunch a couple minutes early, but I'm giving this to you for homework for when we come back together at 12:45. Between now and then, sometime over lunch, I want you to mostly like take a break and go outside for lunch. But when you come back, I want you to have gone through this and just kind of reflected on these and maybe identified one or two that really light you up, associate you with some of those positive emotions that you feel like are your strongest ways of influencing. Okay. Some of you are already chatting, but I want to formally invite you to chat at your table. What I would love for you to do is go around your table. Share which ways of influencing are connecting with you, and then looking at what you initialed in your circle, how do you envision maybe that type of influence playing out for what you initialed? So, for example, maybe you said, oh, I think I'd be really great at being a disruptor, so I initialed this thing, here's how that might look. So share with your table.